I stood frozen in the dimly lit kitchen of his house that night, the secret dinner he'd invited me to still warm on the plates. When he stepped close behind me to reach for the wine glasses, his chest brushed my back, just for a second, and the faint scent of his cologne mixed with garlic and herbs wrapped around me like a secret I wasn't ready to hear. My heart hammered so loud I was sure he could feel it through the thin space between us. We were completely alone, no one else coming. The air suddenly felt thick, heavy with something I had never allowed myself to name. And I couldn't move. I told myself it was nothing. Just dinner, just two friends. But my skin remembered the warmth of him long after he pulled away, and my breath stayed shallow, caught somewhere between fear and want. The next evening we fell into an unspoken routine of cooking together after work. Our hands accidentally touched while chopping vegetables, his fingers grazing mine over the knife handle. That low laugh of his sent a slow warmth through my chest that I tried so hard to ignore. I kept repeating in my head, it's harmless, just sharing a meal, but the way his eyes lingered on my lips when I tasted the sauce from the wooden spoon made my stomach twist with guilt so sharp it almost hurt. He was my best friend's older brother. This house was supposed to be a safe place to crash when I needed it, not a trap slowly closing around feelings I had no right to have. I kept my eyes on the cutting board, but every time he moved closer to stir the pot, the heat from his body brushed against my arm like a promise I knew I should refuse. By the third night, the dinner stretched later, a half-empty bottle of red wine sitting between us on the wooden table. His knee brushed mine underneath and stayed there. The rough fabric of his jeans against my bare leg became this constant, quiet reminder of how close we were, how easy it would be to not pull away. I shifted once, murmuring something about the late hour, but the internal voice whispering HES off limits grew weaker with every passing minute. The scent of his skin clean soap and something darker, warmer lingered in my nostrils long after I finally went to bed, curling into the guest room sheets like it belonged there. I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, telling myself tomorrow I would keep more distance, but already knowing I wouldn't. And yet the pull only grew. I couldn't stop thinking about the way the candlelight had caught in his eyes across the table, or how his voice softened when he said my name, like it was something precious he wasn't supposed to touch. Every small moment replayed in my mind until my cheeks burned in the dark. This was wrong on every level. My best friend trusted me. She trusted him. And here I was, letting the memory of his knee against mine keep me awake, letting it sink deeper into places I had sworn to keep locked. It was quiet, insistent, like gravity slowly tilting the room toward him. I woke the next morning already dreading and craving the evening at the same time. The house felt different now, charged. Every corner held the echo of that almost touch, that almost look. I knew I should make an excuse, say work was too busy, say I needed to go home, but when he texted me a simple "see you tonight," with that little smiley emoji, my fingers typed yes before my brain could catch up. And so the secret dinners continued, each one pulling me a little further into territory I had no map for. On the weekend, we watched an old movie in the living room, sharing one blanket because the heater had given out again. The fabric felt too thin between us, every small shift of his body sending slow ripples of warmth across my skin. When his fingers grazed my shoulder while tugging the cover higher, that single brush made something tight and low in my belly. I pressed my thighs together under the wool, pretending to focus on the flickering screen. This is wrong, I kept thinking, picturing my best friend's laugh, her easy trust in both of us, yet the softness of the blanket and the low hum of the soundtrack wrapped around a craving I couldn't name, pulling it tighter. Mornings turned dangerous without any warning. I'd stand to counter in nothing but loose sweatpants, the steam from dark roast curling up around him like a secret. I caught myself tracing the line of his back, the quiet way muscle moved beneath skin when he reached for a mug. Heat flooded my face and I looked away fast, heart knocking against my ribs. A Chies family to her, not to me like this. I repeated silently over and over, but the memory of his voice saying my name softly across the table that morning made every excuse feel paper-thin, ready to tear. One rainy afternoon we were trapped inside folding laundry side by side on the couch. The accidental press of his arm against mine while reaching for a folded shirt sent a flash through me so sudden I nearly dropped the warm pile. I murmured something about needing the bathroom and escaped, gripping the cool sink edge until my knuckles whitened. One touch doesn't mean anything, I told the mirror. But God, the hunger for more was already whispering louder than guilt. Evenings grew bolder and small, stolen ways. After I complained about neck pain from staring at screens all day, he offered to ease it, his strong hands working oil into my shoulders. The scent of lavender and something deeper, musky filled the quiet room. Each slow press loosened knots I didn't know I hadn't built another kind of tension that made my breath catch. His thumbs traced just a little lower than they should. Stop this, my mind screamed, remembering the complicated someone else he kept circling back to. Yet I found myself leaning in, the friction of right and wrong only sharpening the pull. During another late cooking session, wine loosening our words, I turned too quickly from the stove. Our faces ended up inches apart, his breath warm against my lips, carrying traces of garlic and red wine and something that felt like unspoken want. The air between us thickened until I could almost taste it. I stepped back with a shaky laugh, blaming the heat from the pan, but inside the war raged harder. It's just dinner, just closeness, nothing more. I lied to myself while a flush spread hot across my chest and down my arms. The obsession crept deeper when I began noticing the tiny things he did only for me. The last piece of dessert always saved on my plate. The song he played again because I'd once mentioned liking it. The texture of his favorite hoodie that I borrowed one chilly night and couldn't stop pressing to my face when no one could see. Lying alone in the guest room afterward, sheet school against heated skin, guilt twisted tight around my ribs. I was betraying her trust in the quietest way possible. Yet the way he made this hid and domestic world feel safe and alive kept circling back, louder than shame. That rainy afternoon in the laundry still replayed behind my eyes every time I closed them. The press of his arm, the warmth lingering on cotton. How badly I had wanted to lean into it instead of pulling away. I stood at the bathroom sink longer than I should have, water running cold over my wrists, trying to wash the ache out of my veins. It didn't work. The craving only settled deeper, quiet and insistent, like rain against the window that refused to stop. By the time evening fell again, the house felt charged with every almost moment we'd collected. I told myself I would keep more distance tonight. I even practiced the words in my head while changing clothes. But when I walked into the kitchen and saw him already chopping herbs, that familiar low smile lifting the corner of his mouth, my resolve dissolved like sugar in warm wine. The secret dinners continued, each one drawing me further into territory I had no map for. And tonight, the air already felt heavier than before. Evenings grew bolder in small, stolen ways. After another long day hunched over my laptop, I rubbed the stiff ache in my neck and muttered something under my breath. He noticed, of course he did. Without a word, he wiped his hands on a dish towel, stepped behind the chair where I sat, and offered to work the knots out. His palms were warm from the stove, slick with oil that carried lavender, but underneath it something earthier, musk that made the kitchen feel smaller. Each slow circle of his thumbs pressed deep, loosening muscles I hadn't realized were screaming. My breath hitched when his fingers slid just a fraction lower along my spine, the heat of his skin bleeding through my thin shirt. Stop this right now, my mind hissed, sharp as broken glass. He had that messy on-again, off-again situation hanging over him like smoke, and I was sleeping under my best friend's brother's roof. Yet my shoulders melted anyway, traitor body leaning back into the pressure, craving the next press before it even came. The wine we opened later didn't help. It loosened everything except the guilt coiled tight in my chest. We stood side by side at the counter, chopping and stirring, the steam from the pan curling between us. I turned too fast to grab the salt, and suddenly our faces were so close I could count the faint stubble along his jaw. His breath brushed my lips, warm and laced with garlic and something darker, something that tasted like the words neither of us said. Time stretched thin as a thread about to snap. I forced a shaky laugh and stepped away, blaming the heat from the stove, but my pulse kept hammering against my ribs like it knew the lie. Later that night, the obsession dug its roots deeper. I noticed how he always left the last spoonful of dessert on my plate, sliding it across the table with that quiet half-smile. How he queued up the same slow song on his speaker because I'd mentioned liking it weeks ago. how his favorite hoodie still hung on the back of the chair, and I caught myself pressing the sleeve to my nose when he left the room, breathing in the faint trace of his soap and skin until my knees felt unsteady. Lying in the guest bed afterward, sheets cool against flushed skin, I stared at the ceiling and let the war rage inside. This was betrayal wrapped in domestic kindness. She trusted me here, trusted him, and here I was letting every small gesture burrow under my skin like seeds I couldn't pull out. Yet the way this hidden house made me feel seen, warm, dangerously alive, kept whispering louder than the shame. My fingers twisted the edge of the blanket, heart thudding with the weight of what I was becoming. That rainy afternoon in the laundry room kept flashing behind my eyes every time the house grew quiet. The accidental brush of his arm, the lingering warmth on folded cotton, how desperately I had wanted to stay in that touch instead of fleeing to the sink. Cold water over my wrists hadn't washed it away. The craving only settled heavier, patient as rain on glass that never quite stopped falling. By the next evening the air between us felt thicker than before, charged with every almost word collected. I told myself I would keep distance tonight. I even changed into the loosest sweater I owned, armor against whatever this was becoming. But when I walked into the kitchen and saw him already there, sleeves rolled up, chopping fresh herbs with that familiar low smile tugging at his mouth, my careful resolve like sugar melting in warm wine. He glanced up, eyes softening when they met mine, and asked if I wanted to taste the sauce. Spoon hovering between us, and the scent of him mixed with garlic and simmering tomatoes wrapped around me like an embrace I hadn't turned. My hand trembled just a little as I leaned in. The spoon touched my lips. His gaze dropped to my mouth and stayed there, dark and quiet and full of questions we both pretended not to hear. I swallowed, heat blooming across my chest, and wondered how much longer I could keep pretending this was still innocent, when every breath between us already felt like a confession waiting to break free. The candle flames danced low between us on the table, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for each other across the wood. I pushed a bite of pasta around my plate, the sauce rich and forgotten, because his eyes had already pulled everything else into focus. He set down his fork with a soft clink that cut through the quiet music like a held breath finally released. "I can't pretend anymore," he said, voice low and rough at the edges, the words landing heavy in the space between our chairs. His hand moved then, slow enough that I could have pulled away, but I didn't. Warm fingers covered mine on the table, thumb brushing once, twice over my knuckles as if learning the shape of surrender. Heat traveled up my arm, pooling somewhere deep and unnamed. Then he stood, drawing me with him until the distance vanished. His palm found the curve of my waist through thin fabric, pulling gently, inevitably, until our bodies aligned in the soft glow of the kitchen where so many almost moments had simmered before. Almost reverent, a question asked without sound, then hunger answered, everything tilted. The world narrowed to the press of chest against chest, the way his breath hitched when my fingers curled into his shirt. I tasted the deep red wine we'd shared, mixed with something sharper, something that felt like every secret glance and accidental brush we'd denied for weeks. Gravity won. My back met the edge of the counter, and still we stayed locked in that slow, devouring closeness, hearts hammering out confessions neither of us dared speak aloud. Afterward the room felt smaller, air thicker with everything unsaid. We didn't talk about what this meant or who it hurt. Instead his fingers traced idle circles along my arm in the dim light, each pass sending tiny sparks across my skin. The faint scent of his cologne still clung, now mingled with the warm remnants of dinner and something quieter, more intimate. I lay there against him, pulse gradually slowing, yet the weight of the line we'd crossed pressed heavy on my chest. Acceptance settled in like evening mist, soft, inevitable, and impossible to shake. In the quiet hours before dawn I slipped away, feet silent on the cool floor as I made my way back to the guest room. A ghost that refused to fade. An ache bloomed low and persistent, a constant reminder with every step. No one would know. Not yet. The house stayed wrapped in sleep, his breathing steady from down the hall, a rhythm that pulled at me even as I closed the door behind me. I touched my mouth with trembling fingers, feeling the subtle swell there, the evidence of what hunger had done. Rain began tapping softly against the window, mirroring the storm still turning inside my ribs. This wasn't supposed to awaken anything real. It was meant to stay hidden, harmless, a fleeting warmth in someone else's home. Yet here it was, permanent. A double life unfolding in the spaces between heartbeats, craving wrapped tight around guilt until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I sank onto the edge of the bed, listening to the rain and to the faint sound of his breath carrying through the walls. Terrifyingly right, that was the worst part. The feelings I never expected had cracked something open, leaving me suspended in the delicious, precarious unknown. Wondering how long I could carry this secret before it carried me away completely.